Hey, this is a bit of a special edition esports roundup just on the topic of the Esports World Cup and the efficacy behind it, the ethics, if teams should participate or not. Or what made me do this is the tweet from Liquid Nazgul. Basically, he made like 9-minute video explaining the participation of Team Liquid in the Esports World Cup. And I was like, hey, I have an opinion on that. I think it's a pretty hot topic. Why not talk about it, right? So yeah, I'm just gonna make this little video here where I give my thoughts, mostly like protruding to Team Liquid, not really much else. But I'm gonna talk about like the other orgs, and I'll keep it like fairly broad as well. But like I'm gonna talk about Nazgul's talking points mostly, and like my own thoughts behind them. All right. If you guys haven't watched the video, I recommend that you watch it. I think it's quite interesting, and I think there's like it helps you understand like the team side of things. If you're like staunchly anti Esports World Cup participation, or if you're staunchly for it, I think you can get some perspective by watching the video. Okay, right. I've written down some talking points. I hope that's good enough for me to like remember what I wanted to talk about when I like watched the video. Okay. First thing, and this is not something that gets brought up at all, but I think it's relevant, like in the video, is the money aspect. Liquid, I think, is one of the organizations that can afford not to participate in the Esports World Cup. I don't think most teams or many teams have that luxury. I think there's quite a few teams that have to participate if they want to keep the lights on, because it is quite a source of revenue. Not like in terms of prize money, because usually orgs don't even take a cut anymore, for most games at least. But in terms of like exposure, and sponsorship opportunities, that sort of stuff, engagement, maybe just funding another round of like. Maybe like getting another round of funding, whatever it is. I think some, if not many, orgs are probably monetarily dependent on participating in an event such as the Esports World Cup. I don't think that's the case for Liquid. It's probably not the case for 100 Thieves or Shopify or any of the like richer orgs. I don't know 100 Thieves financial organization, but anything with like real powerful backing, I don't think they have to participate in order to keep the lights on. And granted, Nazgul doesn't talk about that, right? He doesn't mention the money aspect at all. But like, if you're like hard on teams that are smaller, teams like like Beast Coast, for example. You gotta understand that they monetarily probably don't have much of a choice. That I don't know their books, right? But that's just my assumption, because I know esports teams just lose a crap ton of money. All right, okay, relevance aspect. This is something Nazgul talks about. This is if we want to be a top tier organization, we have to participate in these events, because they're like the Esports World Cup is the biggest event in quite a lot of games, in order to keep our relevance, in order to like keep our status as a top tier organization. I think that's tangentially true. I think that's partially true. I think that for some games, yeah, it's definitely the biggest event of the year. But at the same time, the teams and the players are what gives the event relevance, and not the other way around. If the top 20 esports organizations should choose not to participate, then participating in the Esports World Cup is not going to give you any relevance at all. People come there to watch the teams and the players. They're not there because it's called the Esports World Cup. The prize money is some semblance of relevance, but at the end of the day, if the top teams are missing and the top players are missing, people are not going to watch. So Liquid should understand the position of power they have, that they give the event relevance and not the other way around. Of course, if it's only Liquid missing, then it's a different story, right? Because if the top 19 teams are there and one's missing, yeah, the event still carries a load of relevance. Which is why, if you are actually against, the human rights violations and everything like that, and you'd rather not have you would rather not be put in a position where it's like, oh, it's a tough decision to participate or whatever, because like the event is so important or whatever. The importance comes from the teams and the players. And if you were to make a board of like all the top teams or a union of all the top players, and you were to vote on something like that, and you would just reach the decision that, oh, hey, we're not going to participate, I think that problem gets eliminated, right? I don't know if something like that exists, but I think that's something maybe that should be thought about, being created, something that could be made in order to make these sorts of decisions easier and, prevent something like that entirely happening. But I think like the relevancy thing is like more of an excuse rather than something that's like actually a problem. But I think there are solutions to that issue. Yeah, maybe we should go over why it's controversial to participate in the first place, or why people even have an issue with it, because of the numerous human rights violations that come out of the region, especially, the Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, all that sort of stuff. The lack of freedom of speech, the lack of freedom of expression, lack of women's rights, lack of LGBTQIA plus rights, all that sort of stuff. That's what makes it controversial. And that's why, teams are getting flagged for participating. Maybe why teams may not participate at all. Something like that. And that's also something they address. That's also something Liquid addresses. To be fair, they say Liquid gives every of their players, or any of their players, the option to not participate, and there won't be any issue for them if they do that. They're still going to get paid, etc., which I think is the right thing to do. But maybe it should be the inverse. Maybe it should be, hey, we as an organization do not participate. If you want to, we understand, and we'll let you, right? And I think like for like Tekken players, fighting game players, they probably don't really have a choice, right? But like the Dota team could say no. I don't see why not. It's not the biggest event of the year for them. They could easily skip this event and just play TI. If they want to, that's a different thing, right? But it isn't absolutely necessary, and that's where you have to like draw the line. And I don't think the onus should be on the teams. I don't think the onus should be on the players. It should probably be on their organization. But in that case, they've kind of deferred. Well, they didn't defer like the responsibility, but they gave them an out, I guess. All right. Then another thing I have is developers stepping in. I think Valve or any other not tournament organizer, esport game developer could step in and just say, hey, we don't want this event to run. We don't want to participate in sports washing, esports washing. We don't want our game associated with that. We don't want you to run the event. And then they'd have to not run the event. It's because it's pretty straightforward. I don't really see that happening, but I think it's something that maybe should happen. Maybe it shouldn't even be up to these organizations to make the decision in the first place. Maybe the developers should just step in, especially if you're like, I don't know, let's say a Riot Games, and you really pride yourself on the inclusion of others, the diversity, etc. Not that Riot isn't like completely morally bankrupt, but hey, that's at least what you're like trying to make your image, right? Kind of hard to marry that with the with the image or like the policies of, Saudi Arabia, etc. That brings me to my next point, which is that the values that some of these esports organizations have are really hard to marry with the values of these states or like the tournament organizer in that sense. For example, teams like Liquid, they got a lot of pride stuff going on right now. They got a merch line. They got the rainbow logo. You know the deal, right? And I'm glad. I'm really happy they do that, right? But I don't know. Can you really marry the two? Can you really go to the Esports World Cup and have like something like participate in something where like the LGBTQIA rights are like completely non-existent, and then be like, yeah, but we love gay people though? How do you consolidate that? I guess I find that hard. Like morally, that seems difficult. And they do say like, hey, this is something we're bringing to the table. We're trying to get them to change or whatever. We're bringing that in the conversation. They're aware, and it's like there's dialogue happening. There's tough conversations happening. And that's good and all, but like I think you're missing the point, right? This is like consensus. This is esports washing. This is sports washing. And you're if by thinking you can change the way these countries do policy or the tournament organizers do policy or whatever is pretty naive, because that's the entire point of sports or esports washing, is that you want to better the image of the country. Why do you have to better the image of the country or the tournament organizer or whatever? Because of the human rights violations and all that stuff. If they're gonna change the way, if they're gonna change that, then what's the point in having the events anymore? The events are to hide the awful shit that they're doing with migrant workers and stuff. If they were gonna change that, that's all the image you need. If you're actually gonna work on it and solve the problem, you don't need something to boost your image anymore. The whole thing becomes superfluous. So I think it's naive to think you could actually change the way they do business, change the way the policies work, when the whole purpose of the event is to better the image because of the awful stuff that they do. So yeah, those are pretty much my thoughts. I think it should be up to every team, and I don't think I would blame any team for participating or whatever. I don't think I would blame any player. It's just, I think flying the flag and then participating in something like that, it feels a little hypocritical. And I know some people, some organizations, some players, they can't afford to not participate. And I do get that. Their hands are tied. And to them, it's hey, that's your cross to bear. You got to be able to sleep at night. You got to make the tough call. But for the organizations that don't actually, their survival doesn't depend on participating, I think it's time to maybe look towards creating a sort of board, creating a union, a top player mafia, top organization mafia, and saying, hey, maybe we all don't participate, right? Maybe we want to steer the ship in the right direction, and we're gonna miss out on this payday, and we're gonna keep esports clean of blood money. We're gonna keep it clean of esports washing and sports washing. So yeah, those are my thoughts. And yeah, I'll see you next time.